Welcome to Biztech's Personal Finance Show. Today, our conversation is with Souparno Bagchi, the Chief Operating Officer of BalanceHero India, who's going to talk to us about True Balance. Now, True Balance is a Reserve Bank of India authorized prepaid payment instrument issuing entity and is an emerging digital lending fintech platform, which is owned and operated by BalanceHero Group. Now, to tell us more, welcome to the show, Souparno.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Now, could you start by giving us an overview of True Balance and how the idea came about?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, Brian, so True Balance is a fintech platform, and it is targeted towards the audience in India who are primarily either underbanked or unbanked. Right, and it's a fintech platform, and we offer services on payment side of things, which means like we have a wallet, we have utility services by virtue of the payment facilities which we offer, and on the other side we also have the digital lending offering. We lend through our books as well as through our partners. But it's more like a one-stop shop, you can call it, for primarily targeted towards the unbanked and underbanked in India, and catering to lending as well as payment services.
Okay, could you define the underbanked and unbanked in India?
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of income levels, in terms of numbers, give us, because India has scale.
And and that's very important for us to appreciate both the terminologies. When I say underbanked and when I say unbanked. Unbanked is, you can qualify it like through 2-3 lenses. One lens obviously about their credit worthiness. So for example, people who are new to credit, or people who are like the thin credit files, in the sense like people who might not have the best of the credit history. So that's one way to look at it, like the unbanked population. But the other way also to look at it is like, hey, are we like the population which is not always targeted by the traditional financial institutions? It could be because of reachability, it could be because of availability as well. So that's the primarily qualifier for the unbanked population. As far as the underbanked population is considered, many of them, they have maybe decent credit scores. Many of them, they might have they have crossed that barrier around digital literacy. However, maybe it's the cost of service, it's the efficiency, or even the appetite and ability of organizations, traditional organizations primarily, to be able to cater to them, which is hindering to actually get a full service from traditional banks. So that population is primarily qualified as underbanked.
Okay, and can you give us a market size in terms of this underbanked and unbanked population? Because traditionally, India has had a lot of non-bank financial institutions that were doing lending, particularly in rural areas.
No, absolutely. And they have been doing a fantastic job. Rural areas and even like the MFIs, they have been doing a great job. But having said that, Brian, it's also beyond the merit of location. It's also beyond the merit of physical reach. Today, if you look at it in a country like India, the digital lead indicators in terms of people have mobile penetration or people having a smartphone is going really leaps and bounds. And it's more so about like the availability around 24/7. It's about availability across the pin codes and the fingertips rather than the physical availability. So exactly to your point, great job done thus far, maybe in terms of the physical reach out, but the digital reach out 24/7, it's taking a higher precedence. And that's where True Balance and some of the other players come into play.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, tell us a little bit more about how you are bridging the credit gap and addressing this need, because you must have some unique technology and stuff to basically beat the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where to your earlier questions as well, right? What's the genesis and the philosophy? See, our vision of the company is like finance for all. And it takes, if I may say, it takes a lot of courage to kind of make that kind of a bold statement. And it's not just also about like just, hey, reaching out through an app, but what do you mean out of that app, and what do you do out of it? It's more about, are you able to offer product and services in a way which is matching the market? So I'll take the example of maybe our lending product. Now in that, everyone, like even traditional institutions, they do lending, right? But our ability to actually know the customer, know the target segment, understand their persona, their behavior, how they use our app, how they use their other consumer and the financial behaviors is extremely key for us to develop that kind of an underwriting system, to approach them with that kind of an optimized digital reach, so that they know about us, they get to trust us in terms of the availability, disclosures, or even closure of, let's say, loans, entities, etc. So that's point number one. And the
And
point,
I wanna, before you go to the next point, I want to ask you, because eKYC or knowing your customer is a centerpiece of your business to do
yeah.
underwriting. So how do you do that? That's better and then therefore leads to lower default rates down the track.
No, absolutely. You're bang on that point, Brian. So there are two parts to it. One is like true balance, and another is India. So one aspect of it is like, how you actually do eKYC, making sure the compliance matters, everything are taken care of, because we are an RBI regulated entity. That's one part of it. And the second part of it, we being in India, are we able to really leverage the India stack? Right? Be it the upcoming account aggregators, or be it the kind of leverages which we have through many of the players in the ecosystem. That kind of stands us apart on those lines. Our ability to leverage the India stack and our understanding in terms of how to kind of go ahead and respect the compliance matters. So the deep domain expertise and the technological tap into the India stack, I think those are the clear differentiators. Yeah. The second point is that the core of it is like, how do we do the underwriting part of it? So just to give you a flavor, Brian, like we reach out to, so we are digital, right? So when we say like in terms of our reachability, we talk about PIN codes. So we reach out to 85% of PIN codes across India. Now, just if you give yourself a moment and absorb it, for a country like India, which is thus vast and thus diverse, and we reaching out to 85% of the PIN codes is like, in some ways, is phenomenal, right? Now, what it means that we need to have that kind of an underwriting system where we are able to not only disburse loans, approve and disburse loans, but also have the confidence that, what happens in terms of collections, our ability to kind of actually close the transaction, right? And that's where the underwriting system comes into play. And the underwriting system is like a mix of 2-3 major parts. One is like what you have, what kind of traditional data you have, you making sure like what possibly traditional banks and institutions they do, you also kind of do that kind of a thing. But that's the lowest common denominator. That's a must have.
Yes.
Now, what you do over and above it, both in terms of alternate data and as well as alternate model, that's the key differentiator. And the brand and the fact that we as True Balance, we are totally focused towards the segment. We are a segment player. Okay. Like with all due respect, like there are maybe a lot of players who do, let's say, a small ticket of 5,000 INR, like Indian rupees, okay, to let's say 500,000 Indian rupees. But we don't do that. We have a 50,000 INR upper cap. What it means is like we are completely focused and true to the segment. What it means is like we are totally with the customer and the persona which comes from this target group. That helps us to get better understanding in terms of this segment, and our underwriting system or our digital reach out system is totally optimized towards that. Which also goes to say, like where I'll express is like we are also possibly one of the few players who are like 100% D2C, right? So what it means is like when you're 100% D2C, we are totally going towards a particular segment. The depth of understanding which you create for your underwriting system possibly stands you apart.
And also, Souparno, where you're going to is for lack of a better word, and excuse me for saying that, perhaps people at the bottom of the pyramid, but then many people don't realize that the bottom of the pyramid is actually very profitable potentially if you can leverage technology.
Yeah, and the way I look at it, Brian, exactly to your points, right? At the end of the day, what is really sustainable growth or sustainable business? It's about doing good and doing well, right? Frankly speaking, it's a tough problem to crack. Right, it's a lot easier for us to say like, we suddenly open up our ticket size and we start playing at a different segment.
Exactly.
But the real satisfaction is like, are you picking up a problem which, if you solve, actually going to make a difference to lives of people, right? And lives of people is not just about anything of materialistic consumption, but it is like real needs. So if you look at even our the purpose of loans, etc., when you actually look at those details and the data, what the customers disclose and declare, because that's also a mandate, you really draw home the satisfaction that, hey, you're able to kind of make an impact possibly.
No, and absolutely, because what you're doing is perhaps for some of the customers that you are probably addressing, this may be the first loan that they've had that was not from a money lender before. And they're probably getting it at a better rate than they've ever got from their money lender before, and so forth. And it may be to make investments in their first small business, or buying some farm animal or something like that. So I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of the satisfaction when you're targeting that segment. But I want to get a sense from you in terms of where True Balance is at in terms of your customer base right now. Give us a sense of your customer base in terms of size, and what are the default rates like, and perhaps also what are the repeat customers that you've been seeing, because that's also proof in the pudding that the system is working.
Yeah. So let me first give you a flavor of the customers, their personas, right? So our customers are in tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, and tier 3 cities in India. You can imagine when I say we cover 85% of the PIN codes, it's like you really cover the distance, length and breadth, right? In terms of the work profile, etc., or the demography of it, these are by and large, they are people who are economically active. They are possibly by and large concentrated of 20 plus to 40 minus kind of that age group. In terms of work profile, even in tier 1, they could be the gig workers, they could be even students, interns, part-time job seekers. So that's the kind of, even blue collar workers. So that's the kind of demography of our customers, especially on the lending side of things. If you look overall from an active customer base, it's like on a monthly basis, it's almost like it's kind of a touching 3 million kind of a thing. So that's in terms of the overall customer base. Our ability to underwrite and underwrite in that appropriate manner has also been a reflection in terms of how we have been managing the risk and the delinquency in part of it. And possibly we are the better off in the industry.
Okay, really, in terms of, and what does better off mean? How many percent is that in terms of your loan portfolio?
Yeah, so it's like, it's the entire thing is on the risk-based side of things, right? So if you see in this kind of a sector, it's like, I'll say like it's quite a comparable number.
Okay, and how do you fund these loans? Obviously, you don't have a deposit-taking ability. Tell us how you basically fund your loans to the consumer.
Yeah, that's in fact our USP brand. We are possibly among the very few who have both an RBI licensed PPI, which is for the payment services, as well as an RBI licensed NBFC, right? So majorly is through our books, which we are able to lend to the customers, but we also work with our lending partners. So we work with lending partners, but at the same time, we have that strength and confidence of our own books, our own NBFC to be able to lend to our customers.
Now, I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about consumer finance and digital banking and online banking in India. Obviously, there's an explosion. And if you look back, say, even a decade ago, the Indian consumer had very little debt, but now obviously they're taking a lot more debt in terms of financing. Walk us through some of the key trends that are happening in consumer finance in India.
It's really phenomenal what's happening in India, right? It's happening around like multiple layers and stages. So one is the traditional consumer, right? The consumer who has been used to kind of go to a brick and mortar, let's say a branch of a bank, do that kind of banking, and then the graduation to net banking, and then thereafter in the digital world, right? Where possibly the person has never visited a physical branch. And again, as I mentioned, thanks to India stack and the tech around it. So that's one kind of evolution which is happening for the traditional consumers. But the interesting part is the folks who are like digitally native or first-time customers. That's where it's totally phenomenal, because they are not the consumers who are graduating from a brick and mortar model to a digital model. They are the consumers who are just first time getting exposed to a digital model. And this is also not net banking. For them, the bank is what they see on the app, right? So the first time app users, and that's where the real excitement is happening in terms of the consumer behaviors, or the on let's say financial or any personal financial consumption is considered. Because what's happening is it's not just limited to, let's say, a fintech app. It's also like multiple touch points across whatever he or she is doing during a day. It could be like on an e-commerce website. It could be like something which they want to kind of pay out for their medical exigencies. Everywhere the touch point has spread out. So this is the users who are like app only, first time mobile users, and for them the bank is what they see on their fingertips. So that's from the user and the consumer standpoint. From the institutional ecosystem standpoint, it's happening also in a very interesting manner. The regulators and otherwise the governments and the ecosystem has been extremely supportive to encourage that. One is on the fintech side of things, where let's say the fintechs are getting the required support, attention, and even in terms of financing. And the other, what is happening on the traditional and the banking side of things. You would have heard, like even as recent as maybe 1 or 2 weeks back, there is a note which has come up on digital bank units for traditional banks. So this is like extremely phenomenal on both counts, both for the new age fintech players and as well as the banks. And even the partnership between the banks and the fintechs have gone to a different level of maturity.
Now, Souparno, you're from a traditional banking background, and then obviously you've jumped into the fintech space. India was not seen in the past as an innovator in terms of banking and finance. In fact, for many years ago, it was seen as a laggard, but that's changed in the last couple of years. How does the ecosystem today compare with that of China, which is always seen as the innovator?
I would like to kind of requalify that comment possibly, Brad.
Okay, sure, please.
I do agree that maybe there was in the past, there was a larger headroom in terms of innovations, in terms of tech. But when it comes to possibly products, and when it comes to kind of reaching out to different sectors and segments of the society, India and Indian banking system has been quite innovative. Okay. But yeah, I do agree when it comes to, let's say, technology and uses of technology. There was a period where possibly the gap was pretty high. But if you look at it like even going as back as 20 years, 25 years back, when it comes to like net banking, when it comes to digital payments, India is possibly far ahead than many of the developed countries. You look at like users. Yeah, I'll give you simple examples. You look at the let's say the percentage of checks being written. You see the kind of the number of transactions which is happening through net banking. It's phenomenal. And now fast forward to a stage where we are talking about the UPIs, where we are talking about like fintech in terms of the digital lending and the kind of products which are there in the offering. It's not like India is picking up from different parts of the world. I mean, UPI is like India is exporting maybe to other countries, right? So in terms of innovations, therefore, that's why I wanted to kind of qualify. And in terms of innovations, which are currently being primarily led by tech and technology, India possibly is at the forefront.
Fascinating. Now, Souparno, where's True Balance heading after this?
So there are two parts to it. One is, as I said, like we are very clear that we want to be true to the segment. that this segment is what has given us the confidence that our mission of making finance available for all is actually something which is achievable, and we have crossed that journey. Brian, we have been in existence for quite a few years, but the last 1.5 2 years have been really, really phenomenal. It has been tough as well. We call ourselves, we are battle hardened. We have seen the days of pandemic, but at the same time, coming out of it has given us that kind of a strength and conviction that this is the segment where we can really make a difference to the lives of people. So whatever it takes, we'll always be true to the segment. So that's one. Secondly, looking forward in terms of business, we are targeting scale and hyperscale in the area of lending. The reason being is it has given us a good amount of confidence that we have achieved the kind of product market fit which is required to scale at a 5x, 7x level, right? And that too in a span of maybe 12 to 14 months. So that's one.
5x to 7x in 12 to 14 months. That's phenomenal growth that you're looking at. How are you going to fund that growth?
So as I said, like we have our own partners in terms of debt financiers. We have our partners who collaborate with us to do direct financing of those loans. So that's by and large going to be our strategy, both in terms of our own books as well as partnerships. But that apart, we are also focused on, let's say, a few of the other adjacent financial services. We're also focused on how better we can leverage the fact that we offer payment services and as well as lending. So this would be the 2-3 key important levers for us to see through the next 14 months, 18 months.
Souparno, it's been a fascinating conversation. Really learned a lot. But before we leave, any final thoughts to leave us with?
Yeah, so thank you, Brian, for this. Likewise, it was really, really enjoyable. And I must also convey that India is fascinating in terms of the real India, as we call as Bharat in Hindi, which means the real touch and feel beyond, let's say, the glitters of some of the metro cities. So the real India and the ability to kind of really, really make a difference is what the main satisfaction for all of us in True Balance is. So that's the living thought. I'll put it across.
Souparno, thank you very much for your insights and for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Brian. You take care.
We've been speaking to Souparno Bagchi, the Chief Operating Officer of Balancehero India, on Biztech's Personal Finance Show. This video will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in.